Hi, and welcome to episode 7 now of the Leaders in Sustainability podcast. Today I'm joined by Derek Harris, who is the Business Operations Manager at Skyrora. How are you doing, Derek?
I'm doing very well, Lee. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me along today.
No worries. To be honest, I've been excited about this one, so I'm looking forward to covering some of the topics that we're going to go through. So, thanks for coming on. So I think probably the best place to start, we've obviously spoke before, but just for the sake of the audience, be good if you could tell us a wee bit more about Skyrora and I guess what your role is as well. That'd be quite useful.
Yes, certainly. So Skyrora, for those that may have not heard of us, and this will probably come as a bit of a shock, especially with this being about sustainability, is a company in Scotland that builds rockets for going into space and delivering satellites into orbit. So we've been around for about 4.5 years, but we aim to try and push the space sector forward. And with everything we're doing, we're hoping to make sustainability and environment central to our policies and trying to push that to happen within the space sector in the UK.
Amazing. I think probably quite a good. I'm glad you said that. It's probably quite a good place for us to start because obviously, like, space exploration is a hot topic just now, especially with what's going on in the world and stuff like that. Something I picked up on, and I found quite interesting was your mission statement. So I'll just read it out. Our mission is to realise the practical benefits of responsive access to and responsible exploration or exploitation of space for the increased well-being of life on Earth. I found that fascinating. Could you expand on that and tell us a wee bit more about what Skyrora are up to?
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's a bit of a two-part question, so I'll go with the expanding on the mission statement. So really what we're saying is people don't understand how much space, satellites, and the space sector actually does for your normal day-to-day lives. So whether it be sat-nav trying to get places, kids playing Pokemon Go, Harry Potter, Wizard School, or whatever the name is on it, or it could be something as simple as listening to Spotify on the bus on the way to your work. All of these are sort of picked up and done via satellite. So these are just the sort of commercial things that we take for granted in life. If we want to look at the other side of that, you look at the environmental side of it and the impact side. So why are these satellites up there? Well, a lot of them are there for communications, but there's other ones there that are looking towards deforestation, forest fires. They are helping track whales, for example, in the ocean that have been tagged, all these sort of things. And these all come into the Sustainable Development Goals, which the United Nations gave out about a year or so back. And I believe I always forget this, it's either 19 or 17 goals. I believe it's 17, and 13 of those are actually required satellite technology to help with the KPIs, the performance indicators on how these are going. And these are there to drive lifestyle changes and to make life better for not just a few people. So this is not about the rich getting richer. This is about everybody on Earth getting the data they need. So it could be a farmer who's doing their fields, knowing which crops need watered, which are ready to be pulled. It could be helping councils identify where heat loss is happening in council houses. It's basically it's open world to be discovered and to be worked with. And Scotland actually has the key to playing it. So why Skyrora came about? Well, in Scotland, what may not be known at the moment is there's spaceports being developed in the north of Scotland with that. So if we add that and then look at the rest of the space sector in the UK and Scotland, we have satellites and we have data. So you have the likes of Astrosat and Ecometrica that are based in just outside of Edinburgh. You've got satellite builders in Glasgow, the likes of AAC Clyde, Spire, Alba Orbital, that are making these vehicles to give that information back The only thing that was missing was logistics. How do you get these from the ground up into the sky to get the data back? Well, that needs a rocket. So that's where we came along. But knowing that these other companies and that what people are wanting the data for is environmental, it's for sustainability, there was no point us coming in and saying, well, we're going to do it the same old way. The old way where you get clouds of toxic smoke, yellow gases, things like this. We had to take a look at it and say, well, this is a chance for Scotland to improve on the space sector and to try and follow the green credentials, which we've done so well in other industries, oil and gas, renewables, things like this. We've always been at the forefront of this. So Skyrora sort of takes that innovation forward, but within the space sector.
Amazing. And are you able to, I don't know if you're able to give any kind of more specific examples of the type of stuff you work on, or I guess the uses? Is there anything you can expand on there?
Yeah, certainly. So just given it, we've basically done it from a design up point of view. So if anyone's been in business or is listening to this, they'll know themselves, once your business is established, whether it's changing your layout of a factory or things, it costs 10 times more than if you do it from the very beginning. So we've really tried to design our environmental aspects from day one into the company. So by doing that, we looked back at the old UK space programme, which was the Black Arrow programme. The last one was actually 50 years ago. We're actually coming up to the 50th anniversary of the only British satellite launched by a British launcher, which was called Black Arrow, and the satellite was called Prospero. At the time, this was back in 1971, Black Arrow is and was the perfect small satellite launcher, which is what Scotland makes, small satellites for that. And why did I say it was the perfect one? Well, it used kerosene and it used high test peroxide or hydrogen peroxide. So I'll go into why these are a better one, but if you take a look at that, it's just two simple chemicals for the reaction, which gives a cleaner burn than using other types of chemicals, which can often be used. And this was back 50 years ago, so it was almost a perfect vehicle back then. But then the program was scrapped. So we went back and looked at that and said, well, the propulsion works, the fuel works, so let's see what we can do with it. So when we looked into it, we said, well, what makes it cleaner? Well, hydrogen peroxide. For those that might not be chemists, hydrogen peroxide at a very diluted amount is so between 3 and 5% is hair dye, disinfectants, things like this, or what we used it for recently was put into hand gel during the pandemic. We sort of started to produce hand gel to help the government out to make sure the homes, care homes and things had enough. So you look into this, the actual chemical compound itself is H2O2. So it's just water with an extra oxygen molecule. So that's half of our sort of mixture there. And basically what that's there for is we need, when we get to space, to take the oxygen with us. So what happens is we push it through our engine, it goes through a catalyst and it breaks off. So one of the emissions that we let go is water, or steam in this case, and the other one is oxygen, which then burns with the kerosene. So that gives us a bit of a much cleaner burn on that aspect of things. Also, because of the ratio of the fuels that we use 6 parts oxidizer, so 6 HTP to 1 part of kerosene. So we use less of the actual fuel and more of the oxidizer. So it gives us, again, a better ratio as well for the emissions coming out because of that. So we look at kerosene. Kerosene is what people use. So we use rocket grade kerosene. It just means it's been processed a little bit more. So your normal kerosene could be the things that heat your home. It could be kerosene that it's used in industrial processes. So we looked at that and thought, well, what comes out of this? And the 3 main emissions are carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and sulfur. So we looked at, if we were to do a full launch into orbit of a satellite, what would that mean? So if we looked into it, and it comes out about roughly 1 SUV car use a week for per launch is sort of what it comes out at. So that sounds good, but we still wanted to be better.
Okay.
Because you can always strive to be better. So what we did is we went on and we financed and developed EcoScene. And EcoScene is a process where we take previously unrecycled plastics and put it through a 3-stage processing, which then gives us a rocket grade fuel to use. So to break that down a bit more for you, what I mean by unrecyclable plastics. So these are the plastics that aren't normally recycled. Your polystyrenes, the black wrap that goes around the farmers' hay bales and silage hills to keep it dry. These sort of things normally just go straight to an incinerator or get landfilled.
Yep.
We can take this sort of and go through our 3-stage process, and for every 1,000 kilograms of trash plastics, we get 600 kilograms of usable fuels. So those fuels are between rocket fuel, diesel fractions, and then other fractions that can be used for either going away to work on shipping. And because it's kind of like baking a cake, it depends what ingredients you put in. So what we use the main catalyst on the process, but towards the end, the final stage is kind of like a distillation type process. So instead of making a fine whiskey, we're making either aviation fuel or rocket fuel. So it depends what we add in to tweak it together on the recipe to get what we need. And what that has allowed us to do is to reduce sulfur, for example, from 0.005 per kilogram to 0.00001 per kilogram.
Okay.
And we're awaiting the results on the carbon and the carbon dioxide and monoxide coming back on that, and we've been made aware so far that it's showing lower, but I don't have the exact figures on that test yet. Hopefully get them at the end of this week. But we're aware the characteristics of it as well actually gives us, if you excuse the pun, a bit more bang for our buck. I probably should use bang when we're talking about rockets and rocket fuel, but it gives us a better performance, so we can actually use less fuel again, which again brings down the amount of emissions. So that's been done from design point 1 for us. So that's only one of the aspects that we've looked into to try and make our vehicles more sustainable and better for what would basically be the dirty part of the link, or the dirty part of the circle. So we've tried to make that use design as a way to get that out and to work on the sustainability, because if we look at it, you're always going to have companies that are carbon negative, and some of them that are actually giving back are sort of helping give carbon credits back in. Rockets, unfortunately, are never ever, unless you can make a new 100% green fuel, which hopefully someone listening to this is going to do and then come to me with the idea, you'll never make it carbon neutral or carbon negative. So we have to do what we can to get as close to that, and then use other things throughout our business. So our supply chain, the way that we use our vehicles, the way that we do merchandising. So we make sure that the merchandising we've done is recycled materials, everything that goes out, postage is recycling, things like that. So we try and work with and keep that footprint down as well. So we're aware that the main actual launch and such will never get to that carbon neutral point, but it's about looking at the whole business and what aspects that we can change to try and be better.
Amazing. No, it's fascinating stuff. I'm gonna hit you with another double question. Apologies. What I'm really interested in is how a focus on doing more in relation to sustainability is baked in. Because you mentioned it being built in from the start, but what kind of leadership, what kind of purpose is baked in to Skyrora that allows you to take big strides with that? And the second part of the question is about collaboration. How collaborative and open is the space sector? Are people working together, or is there still kind of silos and kind of competition at all costs? What is that changing?
Yes, certainly. That's two very good questions. So from our point of view, how it's came part of our core culture is it comes from our CEO down, so from Vladimir Levikin. And when he was there, he was like, well, if Scotland's going to have a space race and to go to space, it should be done right. It's like everyone else is reaching to get back to the moon or reaching to go to Mars, but there's so many problems we've caused on Earth that we need to look after. So all these satellites are looking towards that way, so we should have to make our business model go that way. So it sort of came from the top down, and that dilutes into, so again with design, we use 3D printing engines. So you might think that doesn't do a huge amount. So if I tell you how an engine would normally be done, so our very first prototype engine, for example, was done with a 3D printer with a company in Italy. It then had to be made in Italy, transferred to the UK.
Yeah.
We then had to machine it. So far that's moved from Italy to the UK to us. Then it's went from us to the machine workshop, back from the machine workshop to us. So there's quite a lot of travel about there for this one little bit of kit, which is quite important. So by 3D printing and doing this in-house, it allows us to cut out that part of the chain. And because we've actually went ahead and invented our own 3D printer called Skyprint, which allows us to machine and 3D print at the same time, it means it's all made in-house. So we try and source our materials locally. We try and do with that. And by using the 3D printer, it allows us to not have to waste. So if you were going through old school processes of making an engine, you would have cut-offs of metal, things like this, which would just be useless. You wouldn't really be able to use them. But with 3D printing, we can make it. And for example, say after you start to do non-destructive testing on it and you find out that there's a weak part on the side, what you can do is actually cut out that part of the engine, and our printer can actually repair that. So it can put in a new piece. So this is allowing us to basically cut down on waste, cut down on cost, and cut down on moving the items about. And it became very efficient and very cost effective for us, which again, all this gets passed into the process, which brings space back to the normal person and allows us to be a bit more sustainable. So that's another way that it's been built in. It's been looking at the innovations we can do to bring that back. In regards to the sector, you're always going to have competition. But I think what's really good about this sector is that it's a friendly competition. Most companies are really happy to speak to each other. I was lucky enough before the pandemic to be in Washington, D.C. for a conference, and I ended up being interviewed on the Rocket Lab stand. We both thought it was quite funny because I was talking to them and they were talking to me, and it was a young YouTuber who came up to us and went, "Oh, Skyrora, I've heard about you. I'd like to speak about you." And I'm laughing. I said, "Well, Rocket Lab's there as well." And Rocket Lab's like, "Yeah, she's asked us for an interview earlier." I said, "Unfortunately, I don't have a stand. I'm just here visiting," sort of thing. And I said, "I tell you what, if Rocket Lab will let me take a sofa seat with you," I said, "I'll do it here." And they were like, "Yeah, go for it." So we ended up doing the interview in front of Rocket Lab, which was good fun. And it was just shows the sort of, they're happy that they've got other people coming into the market. They're secure, they know what their product is. So it shows a good sign. But collaboration within the UK, definitely. We go to a lot of events, so we meet the regular people from the companies, from Spire and the Glasgow, other ones, AE Cloud and things like this. Astroscale, who are trying to look at deorbiting space junk, for example, and Astrosat. We meet all of these people quite a lot. And when things come out, so we launched back in last month, I think it was, the Prospero principles that we're looking at, and it was to try and get collaboration within the sector to say, well, now Prospero, the satellite, is out there 50 years later, it's not doing anything. Is there a way we can capture this and bring it back so it can go into a museum? Yeah. So we have little ways. Our Space Tug could maybe help with this, but we would then need to look at companies like Spaceforge, who are pushing forward with heat shielding. So if we were just to drag that out of orbit and back to Earth, it would burn up, so we need this heat shielding. So it's talking to the different companies and getting all the sectors talking together to say, well, we've got this, we could do that, how can we do it? And it's not, for us, sustainability and net zero isn't just about standing on the street in Edinburgh. Net zero has to be for space as well. We need to be looking after what we're putting up there. So there's been a big push in the last couple of years. It's pushed on from the Scottish Space Leadership Council, who recently worked with Astro Agency and brought in myself, Hina Khan from Spire, and Suki from She's going to kill me. I forgot the company now. EC Clyde, and we led the reusability and sustainability challenges, and that was bringing in experts from around the world, like Mariba Ya, who is basically the number one person when you talk about space debris in the world, and was bringing them all together to talk. And we had people from the insurance industry, we had people from Parliament, we had everyone in here, we had Friends of the Earth invited as well. So it was like, you want the space sector to be better, tell us how to do it. So we all have that sort of agreement, we want to do that, and these people have all sort of collaborated, and it's been something that was put forward, and we're now trying to sort of put a white paper forward so we can take that towards the government and say, but this is what we see as the way forward. Will you get on board with this? The UK Space Agency and European Space Agency are both looking at similar ideas, but the collaboration across the companies has been absolutely amazing. As I say, the Astroscale and the ones that I've mentioned, Kumar and Harry at Astroscale especially, have been in contact, and they're really looking and agree with we don't only need the net zero on Earth, but we need to look at net zero in space.
Wow, that's really fascinating. And I think regardless of what sector you work in, some of the things we've covered in this chat so far, two stand out for me. So doing more than the bare minimum, I think, is important for every sector, but also collaborating to be able to tackle new and accelerating challenges that we're all facing. And particularly in the marketing sector, I've found that anyone you speak to that's involved in tackling climate change, prioritising sustainability, they're pretty open. They're pretty open to just sharing ideas, sharing knowledge, jumping on a call. And it sounds like the space sector, from what I've heard anyway, is similar, which is promising.
Yeah, I think because the space sector is quite a new sector in the UK, especially with launch and the actual launch sites being there, I have to say that really the data and the satellites have been here for years. It's just been a hidden secret which a lot of people have never really known about, unfortunately. But everyone is looking forward for this. Everyone wants to move forward. And what I find very interesting is people have came from different areas. So I've seen people that have came in from data analytics and banking. I've seen the people coming in from the nuclear sector, things like this. So the sector's beginning to get a wide range of people with different ideas. So it's beginning to expand that way. And as you say, it's a collaboration that's really helping with this. Everyone's looking at it and thinking, well, it would be quite easy to say everyone's after the money, because that's what everyone is. Everyone goes to work for money, and anyone that says they don't either has a very, very fulfilling job or is lying, if we're being honest. So, but most of us want to do something that makes a difference. This is why you get the satellite and data companies that are looking at all these forest fires, because they're wanting to make a difference. This is what they've came out, and this is how we can do it. And as I said, we had to take a big look at ourselves, and it's like we could have hid away.
Yeah.
We know where the dirtiest section of the link, or the dirtiest link in the whole launch family, to get into space. But if we do that, we're just sort of burying our head in the sand. Whereas if we take it square on and look at it square on, we get a lot more respect for that. If someone says, well, you're doing this, well, okay, can you help us? Tell us what you'd like us to do. Let's see. And as I said, the joke I made earlier about hoping one of your listeners will be someone that will come to me in a couple of months' time or 5 years' time. So I've made this fuel, will it work? This is what we're all looking for. So we want to take that next step. Everything, it doesn't matter what you do, everything is expensive in life. But if you look at the impact, if you don't do anything, that's a lot more expensive. And I think that's the way, as a company, we've also looked at it, is if we don't do it, it's not going to take long until you have the Kessler effect. So the Kessler effect is basically something crashing into a satellite and sending millions of small pieces, which then stops it from launching. If you then can't launch, you can't launch other satellites to track the poles, to do all that good stuff that we need, which then basically means we're stuck on Earth trying to do this by hand, and we can't get the eye in the sky view, and everything becomes much more difficult. So it's taking that responsibility on board from day one and moving forward. And even the companies that have been established longer than that, they are also pushing this. They also completely agree with it and are pushing it forward. So the collaboration has been absolutely amazing from all parties.
So that was kind of leading on to my next question, actually, is from a broad kind of sector perspective, and I guess just from your perspective as well, you might have a unique view. I think everyone has different views on this and different stages of understanding, but something that's obviously a very prominent topic just now is the accelerating effects of climate change and reports that are coming out publicly. How is the sector responding to that? Is it like even from a kind of government level, from a governing body level, is there anything you could speak about that would give us an insight into how the sector's adapting that you've not already covered, because we have covered a bit?
Yeah, pretty much. So I've been very, very lucky to speak with Ivan McKee and a few others down at Holyrood. My local MP, Christine Graham, is absolutely mad on space. And she's been a great sort of, I'm trying to remember the word for it, advocate for space. But she likes how we're doing it. She likes how we're trying to make things better. So speaking with the government, Scottish Government and Westminster, so we've spoken with both, we've got quite a good relationship with both, and they are all the same way. They are all wanting to look how not only Britain can get that 10% of the space pie, but how we can do better, how we can be the leaders of this going forward. The UK Space Agency and the CEA, who's the regulators for ourselves, they have been really difficult situation over the last few years trying to get the regulations out for space launch. As you can imagine, trying to write the rules of the game for anything's difficult, but when you're talking about space launch, you've got everything from environment, safety, people, all to cover with. So it's a little bit insane. But they've done so well, as considering especially a lot of them got pulled away with the COVID pandemic. Okay. So this has all been looked into. So while a lot of the paperwork's still to be coming out, I know when they've looked at launch licenses, they've looked at the emissions that a vehicle does, for example. They've looked at spaceport licenses and looked at the economic and environmental impacts as well. So if there is going to be an environmental impact, is the economical impact going to sort of bring a area of the country which is basically destitute or not, doesn't have many jobs and needs reinvigorating, is it going to work there? So there's a lot of things done behind the scenes, and there's a few people there that need sort of a lot of shout outs for that. So myself, as I say, I'm very lucky that I get to see the likes of Joanne Wheeler and the team at Alden, and oh God, there's so many names I could find out on the podcast for you. But they are all in their own way pushing there. I'm trying to remember, but there's think tanks that have been put together, and I think one of the most recent one was a lady by the name of Angela Mathis brought up when we were doing the sustainability part. She was saying, but what is the impact of launch, not on Earth, not in space debris, but in between? So like when we're releasing carbon monoxide, dioxide into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
No one knows. No one's ever tested this. No one's ever looked at it. So this was one of the things that came out of that sustainability course, or sustainability sessions that we were having, was, well, maybe part of one of these white papers should be, this is looked into. If we as a nation are going to start launching 10 to 16 vehicles a year, what is the impact on the ozone above us going to be like? Is it going to have a negative impact? If so, well, okay, what do we need to do? What other regulations need to come into play? So it's been very, very unique seeing the government, and in this case it's been a lot more smaller enterprises and medium enterprises coming together to try and push this forward with the government, rather than your normal primes. So your larger primes are obviously there and they're about, but they've already got their voice and their seat at the table sort of thing. what it seems to have been the one that's really pushed it within the space sector has been the small and medium companies that have sort of banded together to work to get this going forward, and the governments have listened. So you've got your Space Committee down in Westminster, your Technology Committee at Holyrood, and as I said, I know Ivan keeps a keen eye on the space sector as well. Minister McKee. I'll get shot for that one. But he's very, very pleasant, and I always laugh because I seem to go across and try and tell him some more news. He's like, yeah, I knew you were doing that. It's like, you knew I was doing that. I was only doing it yesterday. So they've very much got the eyes on the industry to make sure that we're going in the right direction. They're always, I would like to say you could just pick up the phone and speak to them. It very much is similar to that. Obviously, you can't just pick up the phone and get a minister. If we need to speak to them, they're very open to listening to us, and they never turn us away with a flea in our ear. So it's good. It's a good relationship there, and it's good to see the government backing the stance of what the sort of companies are looking to do.
Brilliant. No, amazing. That's really useful information, I think. We're kind of coming to the end of the kind of podcast, so there was just one more question really, and that was just kind of what's next for Skyrora. What are you focusing on? And then the second part, I like a two-part question. How can people get in touch? How can people get in touch with or find out more?
Well, excellent. I think the best part for that will be, I'll go with the second part first. So if you want to see and follow us on our journey, I love a cheesy line, so follow us on our journey to the stars. If you can find us on Facebook at Skyrora Limited, same with Twitter and Instagram. We do have LinkedIn and TikTok, but please don't ask me the TikTok. I don't know how to use it. That's part of my communications team, who are outstanding with that. So you can follow our journey there. And the cheeky comment would be to watch the space. Literally within the next week or two, we've got some big announcements hopefully going to come out, which is to do with jobs and which is to do with upcoming launches. And this will sort of give an indication of the health of the space sector as well, and the launch sector within Scotland.
Wow, interesting.
Really, that's about it. If you want I would say a sneak peek into it, we are hoping that we've applied for our licenses, which means if they come through when they should do, we should be available and ready to launch our first demonstrator of our main vehicle, Skyrora XL, in Q4 2022, which we're still on call for. So it's absolutely amazing that the team have managed to get this done, especially during the pandemic and everything there. But to get that there, as I said, it's now working with the CAA, the regulators, the UK Space Agency, to get that over the line. And I'll basically be throwing a party once that license comes in.
Perfect. Cool. Well, that's really useful, and we've covered so much actually in such a short space of time. So I really appreciate that. I think there's a lot of interesting information that's a little bit different to what we usually get on the podcast. So I think people will find it really useful. But that's amazing. Appreciate your time, Derek, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, lovely to be on, Lee. Thank you. And as I said, I'm happy for any of the listeners to reach out to me if they want to ask any questions, and I'll be back later with more information for you.
Amazing. Thank you.